Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Mark Steiner. Good to have you all with us. Monsanto, or should I say the new chemical agricultural product giant Bayer Monsanto, has been attacking journalists and scientists with disinformation campaigns, as they did to our guest, to intimidate and stop journalists, scientists, and activists in an attempt to silence criticism against it, even when human lives are at stake. Monsanto is the world's most famous, or some would say perhaps infamous company for producing and selling chemicals for agriculture. When the German corporation Bayer bought Monsanto in June of last year, that we covered here at the Real News, for $63 billion, lawsuits against Monsanto became Bayer's problem and caused a fall in their stock value. In April, Bayer executive chairman Werner Wenning spoke to the stockholders.
Und Verantwortung sind tief.
These legal procedures led to the considerable drop in the price for the Bayer share, which means you, dear shareholders, also had to endure losses. We regret this very much.
So last year, a California grand jury found Monsanto guilty of failing to warn customers of the possible cancer risks. Judge Susan Ramos-Bolanos summarized it this way in her verdict.
Was the Roundup Pro or Ranger Pro design a substantial factor in causing harm to Mr. Johnson? Answer, yes.
And then a judge awarded punitive damages of $2 billion. But Bayer appealed, and the California Alameda County Superior Court ruled last month that punitive damages cannot exceed $200 million, which is just a tenth of the original amount. Bayer shares soared in response to that announcement, and the company continues to seek a legal decision which will stop all pending lawsuits and prevent new ones. One of the journalists who was most instrumental in exposing the health risks posed by Roundup, its glyphosate contents, and talked to the people who developed cancer after years of exposure to Roundup, is our guest, Carey Gillam. When Bayer learned of Carey Gillam's work, they started a Cyber-Defamation campaign against her, creating fake accounts on social media, challenging her methods and motivations, and even paying Google to divert search results to blogs and other resources created to attack her rather than the ones that talked about the results of her research. Well, Carey Gillam is a veteran investigative journalist with more than 25 years of experience, covering corporate news, including 17 years as senior correspondent for Reuters International. She's author of the book, Whitewash, the story of the weed killer, cancer, and the corruption of science, which was an expose of all we're about to talk about with Monsanto and more. And Carey Gillam, welcome to Real News. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As I told you before we went on the air, I share your pain, having been a victim of the same kind of companies when we were trying to cover similar things in that industry a bunch of years back. But can you briefly tell our viewers what was the main finding which you published about the risk around glyphosate and why you think that this caused such a reaction from Monsanto?
Yeah, I mean, this campaign by Monsanto against me has been going on for, a long time, well more than a decade, certainly. And I really was just doing my job as a journalist. I mean, I was reporting on the new scientific evidence that was coming out about different risks, cancer risks and other health risks associated with Monsanto's herbicides, Roundup and their other glyphosate-based herbicides. And in my book, Whitewash, which came out in 2017, I relied on, thousands of pages of Freedom of Information documents that I obtained and some internal Monsanto documents, EPA documents, and really made it clear that Monsanto had spent, many, many decades hiding, whitewashing the dangers of its chemical. And the book talked about, not only the dangers to human health, but the impacts on environmental health as well. And, the company, they couldn't find anything wrong in the book, but they sure didn't like it. And so, that's what they've been doing, is trying to discredit me in the book.
Now, I interviewed some of the people who were part of that suit a while back, and other people involved in the suit, and the attorneys involved in that suit. And they were going after lots of people, but they really targeted you. And I'm curious why you think Bayer now has launched this really personal campaign against you. I mean, trying to undermine your findings. I mean, even getting people to write false things on your book review, and that was stopped by Amazon, and all that going on. I mean, and so that's A. And B, do you think because of what they're doing and the way they're doing these lawsuits, it's too late to argue that glyphosate is unsafe? I mean, how do you think this is going to play out?
A lot of questions there.
I'm sorry, we can take them one at a time. I do that sometimes, but go ahead.
No, I mean, The first question, why me? Why are they attacking me? First of all, I am just one of many. As you said, you've experienced this sort of thing. Many, many scientists around the world and many other journalists have also experienced sort of this campaign by Monsanto and others in the chemical industry to discredit them. I think I sort of am a top target just because I've done this for so long. I've been covering the company since 1998. There are few journalists who have followed it and covered it and know this issue as extensively as I do. I'm an old dog. I've been doing it a long time. And I know what's true and what's not, and so that makes me, I guess, dangerous to them. In terms of, the litigation and Roundup, all the lawsuits are more than 18,000 people who have sued Monsanto. It's a big problem for them. And these trials, we've had 3 so far, are spotlighting all of this information that Monsanto wanted to keep secret for so long, which are not only the scientific studies that show evidence of harm, but all of these very subversive and secretive ways that Monsanto sought to manipulate the scientific literature, manipulate regulators, and manipulate members of the media.
So, this is a huge piece of their company, Glyphosate. Some people argue that part of this is because they're worried about their stock. It went down, and they want to increase the stock price. But, I'm sure that's part of it. But it's more than that. Because they've been attacked, the way they go after people. It hasn't been just you. They've attacked scientists and others who have attempted to raise any questions about the safety of their products. And have a huge political influence in this administration in Washington and administrations across the globe. So I'm just curious, what for you and others who investigate this, what comes next, and where do you think this goes next?
Well, I'm working on another book. I don't know what other people are doing. Truthfully, what's going to happen, Bayer has seen the writing on the wall. They know that they are very unlikely to prevail in future court cases. They are trying now to settle this litigation and make it go away. Whether or not that actually happens remains to be seen. There are many more internal Monsanto documents, some that I have seen but have not yet been reported, many others that are still coming in through the discovery process. And I think the company really doesn't want these to come out. And if they have another trial or 2 more or 5 more or 10 more or 1,000 more, all of this, damning information is just going to grow and expand, and it's hurting the share price of Bayer. The CEO of Bayer, the investors have passed a vote of no confidence to try to get him yanked out of, the company. There's a lot of pressure being placed on Bayer right now to figure out a way to clean up this mess that Monsanto created.
Well, that leads to my next thought here before we conclude. Bayer is one of Germany's oldest, biggest corporations. It's huge across the globe. Monsanto makes it even a larger company. Now, one of the biggest agrochemical businesses in the world at this point, if not the largest. And so, when Bayer took this company on, they knew it was a toxic company. They knew things were going against it, and in a literal as well as a figurative sense. So I'm just curious, how do you have any analysis of why they even bought the company in the first place? What does this mean for kind of the future of agriculture and the future of people who are working in this world? And because on the other side you have all these thousands and thousands of cancer patients who are going to seek justice and are seeking justice. So it's a very complex thing that's not going away.
Right. Well, Monsanto, had a lot of value. That's why Bayer paid $63 billion for it. They have a very rich seed and genetic trait portfolio. Their genetically altered seed business brought in quite a lot of money. They were a very dominant player in this herbicide market, the glyphosate-based herbicides. They also have dicamba-based herbicides. Monsanto has long been a very big player and had a controlling, interest and dominance in the agricultural sector, and Bayer wanted a piece of that. So from that perspective, it made sense for them. What they didn't do and where they fell short is they obviously did not do sufficient due diligence to understand the liability that lay within this glyphosate-based business. And this could, if this unravels and glyphosate is banned, people move away from it, then these genetically altered seeds that are tied to glyphosate tolerance become less valuable. So there's a very big problem for Bayer. They didn't do their due diligence, and then they should have.
Or maybe they did do their due diligence and think that they can really push this, and this is where the future's going in terms of where agriculture is going, and this is where the money is, and they thought it was worth the risk. I mean, that's the thing we don't know. And B, whether or not their lawsuits will have an effect to stop people like you, stop scientists, and stop people from suing them. I mean, that's what they're trying to do at this moment.
Right. Well, I mean, I would argue that against the proper due diligence, because one of the cardinal rules of, running a public company is you never, you don't surprise your investors with bad news. you don't do that. And certainly that's what happened with this litigation. The share prices have plummeted. They've wiped out more than 40% of the shareholder value. It's a disaster for Bayer, and they are trying to figure out, what to do about it.
So are you continuing this, or are you off to new ventures and investigative work?
Well, I do have another book I'm writing about this. There's so much more has come out, and the political implications, the human health implications, there's much more to say. There's a documentary in the works. I know there's a feature film in the works as well. So, people are still really, really following this. And I do think this is really important because Monsanto's not just the only company that engages in this type of manipulation. Right. And this product is not the only product, that is dangerous for our health and our environment. This is the poster child for a bigger problem. And, we need to pay attention to this.
So one small thing you said before we close here, this in many ways is and does become not just a legal battle, but becomes a political battle here in the United States, but also across the globe. I mean, this is what's heightening up now.
Exactly. And what we've seen, I have a great document. I wrote a little thing about it from the White House, an internal report that Monsanto had where the White House is saying, we've got your back. You don't have to worry about, anything because the White House has got your back on glyphosate. And, that's a scary thing when our government is more interested in protecting corporate profits than they are public health.
That's something that hasn't been reported very much.
I wrote about it. Nobody else really has yet.
Right, I know that. I mean, it's really important. I mean, because this is part of what people have been complaining about with this particular administration, are the numbers of people from this industry who are now the watchdogs of the very industry they made money on.
Exactly. We're seeing it in a number of different ways. We're seeing it with Dow Chemical and other pesticides. We're seeing it, in opening up areas for mining, and this administration in particular has been very aggressive in rolling back regulations that are designed to protect the public in favor of protecting and advancing the interests of corporations.
Well, Carey Gillam, A, thank you for joining us, and B, thank you for the work you do. We look forward to what comes next and further conversations. This is a hugely important thing you're doing, so thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I'm Mark Steiner here for the Real News Network. Thank you all for joining us. Let us know what you think. Take care.
Thanks a lot for watching. Appreciate it. But do us one more solemn favor. Hit the subscribe button below. You know you want to. Stay up on the videos.